Om Shanti. Uh, it is quite familiar across the globe that Muslims do circumcise their private parts, and Hindus tonsure their head. And in this video, we will try to reveal the spiritual truth hidden in these two activities. Um, First, let's see the direct teachings of God from which these religious activities evolve later. So in the direct teachings of God through Brahma Kumaris, God says, um, God teaches us basically to get rid of this bodily attachment. He asks you to get rid of body consciousness and to become soul conscious. That is, we are souls that shines as a point of light in between our eyebrows. We are the master of this body. We are not the slaves to these senses. We should be the master. We should have complete control over our senses. That is the basic teaching of God. Uh, the famous religious books like Bible, Quran and Bhagavad Gita all mention about the arrival of God in the end. But what they haven't mentioned is God comes to give these teachings, and it is through this teaching He is creating heaven. Just like Bible is essential for the creation of Christianity, Quran is essential for the creation of Muslim, God's direct knowledge is only responsible for the creation of heaven, and that is why God comes. And you cannot enter heaven by Quran or Bible or Bhagavad Gita. Jesus clearly says that if you are calling out my name, you cannot enter heaven. Only if you can recognize my heavenly Father and calls out his name, you will be entering heaven. But he hasn't mentioned about how God will come and what will he says. And even his disciples at one point asked him when God would arrive. For that Jesus replied that except God, nobody knows the exact timing of his arrival. But he has arrived in India, and he has been teaching his divine teachings for the past 77 years through Brahma Kumaris. Only after coming there and listening to his knowledge, you can be assured of the fact that it is only God who can give those precious teachings about the 5000-year time cycle called Kalpa. God says there is a time cycle called Kalpa that consists of 5000 years, and for the first 2500 years we will be living there as angels. We will be taking birth and rebirth, and after the completion of first 2500 years we will be entering hell, which is the same earth. While we were living as angels in the first 2500 years, this world will be heaven. The same world will be turned into hell in the next 2500 years when we become humans. The basic difference between angels and humans is the angels will be completely soul conscious. That is, they will be very much aware that they are souls that controls this body. But after the completion of first 2500 years, we slowly become body conscious, and that is where we become human. That is, by becoming body conscious we start developing lust, ego, anger, greed and all those vices, and it is through those vices we start creating this heaven into hell. So God doesn't involve in that. God comes in the last 100 years to convert hell into heaven by giving this knowledge. That is his um, changing human beings into divine beings through his divine teachings. And his divine teaching basically is to ask us to get rid of body conscious and to become soul conscious. So this is the actual direct teaching of God. This same teaching will be taken by all humans before they leave this earth to enter a place called Supreme Abode. It is from there we come down to this earth through a womb of a human, and from then we start taking birth after a birth till we complete maximum of 84 births, which is going to last for 5000 years. So it takes 5000 years to complete 84 births. So that is called one kalpa. But God, he is also in the supreme abode with us, but he comes only in the last 100 years. He doesn't enter the womb. He comes directly as a soul, and he enters a body just to give this teaching temporarily, and again he goes back to his supreme abode called Parandam. So this photograph represents the Parandam, that golden reddish color, and the white point in the middle is the form of God. Even we are just like that, but we are in between our eyebrows. Um, so everybody has to come to God to take his teaching. Only then the soul knows its path to its real home called Parandam or Supreme Abode. So whether it is Jesus, whether it is Christ, whether it is Buddha, whether it is Muhammad, or any common people, everybody must have to come to Brahma Kumaris, and it is only after getting this message through us that we are just souls. You have to recognize yourself as soul and start remembering our God in the Supreme Abode. Only by that we can purify our sins and we can go back to our Supreme Abode, which is our real sweet home. So all these religious preachers, they wouldn't be coming initially just like us. They wouldn't come like that. They'll be, because their religions will be holding them very tightly, so they wouldn't accept that God himself has arrived in India and he has been teaching for the past 77 years. They wouldn't accept that. But after seeing many signs that was given in Bible, that was also being told by Brahma Kumaris at various instances through many media like this video, so they would finally realize that this is God and they would all come here. So those religious preachers will be the last to come. So they, after taking this knowledge, they would know that they were Jesus and they were Muhammad, they were Buddha. They would know all these things, but they wanted so badly to convey this message to people. But as soon as they get this knowledge, they would leave this body and they'll be going back to Parandam, and they'll be waiting. They'll be just resting there for the first 2500 years. No religious preachers would enter heaven. So there's no need to mention about the people belonging to this religion. Even they wouldn't enter heaven. So there'd be, for example, if you take Jesus Christ, this Christ is a pure soul that is responsible for the teachings of Jesus. Jesus did not do anything. He was just an ordinary human who took birth just like us. In his 30s, Christ, which is a pure soul, descended directly from Supreme Abode into Jesus' forehead and start giving this teaching. He wouldn't be there permanently. He would come there and start giving divine teachings like show the other cheek to the one who slaps in your cheek, right? So those were divine teachings, but that does not belong to Jesus. It belongs to Christ, which is a pure soul, which means it doesn't enter the womb. So after giving this teaching, so those teachings were actually the teachings of God which we provide now. But the Christ wouldn't remember everything. It gives very light little teachings, uh, so it doesn't remember about rebirth, so he wouldn't say all those things, but he would say about those judgment day, uh, and how heaven would look like, what are the punishment that would happen in the last minute. All those things were covered, but no religion has said anything about the actual form of soul or the actual form of God. If those Bible, Quran and Bhagavad Gita were written by God, God would give the introduction about himself, right? He would have said how he looks like, but that was not mentioned in any of these books because they were basically written by humans. Um, so let's come to the topic about the circumcision and the tonsuring of head by Muslims and Hindus. Um, so original teaching of God includes um, the giving up of bodily attachment. That was actually tested in the Old Testament of Bible, as one has to circumcise to show his loyalty towards God. What is God going to do with your circumcision? They just blindly follow what is written in that, because that was written by humans. But the original teaching was you have to get rid of your bodily attachment, your body conscious. The extremeness of body consciousness is lust and sex. So God asks you to give up sex altogether. But at that point, if he says now, it makes sense, because this is the last birth. Even if you indulge in sex, even if you give birth to somebody, he's not going to enjoy this world for very long, because this is our last birth. But Jesus has um, said 2000 years back that world will get destroyed uh, very soon, which means he says the disciples who are listening to his teaching will see the end, which means it should have happened 2000 years before itself, but it did not happen till now, which means his knowledge was true, but the timing was not correct, because Christ thinks that it is at this point that's going to happen, but it did not remember that it was sleeping in supreme abode for the first 2500 years, and it comes in the middle of the kalpa. So that's why everything goes wrong. So giving up sex altogether is twisted as circumcising the private part that is responsible for indulging in sex. So that is how this comes into being. And the tonsuring of head by Hindus, shaving their head, was also the misrepresentation of the same truth, that is, you should give up the body consciousness and become soul consciousness. So this ego, that is the sense of I, comes in the head. One cannot just cut off their head, so they come up with the idea of tonsuring the head, because the tonsuring, removing one's hair is not going to create any damage to anybody, right? So that's what the religious texts written by Hindus mention. But the actual teaching of God that is hidden in these two activities, that is circumcision and tonsuring of head, is give up your body consciousness fully and start becoming soul consciousness. So you cannot develop soul consciousness just by listening to this video. You need to come to Brahmakumaris where they teach daily for just 20 minutes. They'll be reading out 4 pages. That is the direct teaching of God now. So it is totally free of cost because it was controlled by God himself directly. That is the only spiritual organization run directly by God. I know it is very hard to understand and believe in the very first instance, but after coming there you would know by listening to his knowledge that only God can reveal all these truths. So this uh, creation of heaven by God and slow emergence of body consciousness creates hell on its own is represented by Bible as Adam and Eve, after consuming that forbidden fruit, develops body consciousness. On hearing this, God sends them to hell. So it doesn't mean God creates heaven just for those two people. Those Adam and Eve represent Adi Sanadana Devi Devata Dharma. That is the angels who were living in this earth for the first 2500 years when it was heaven. So when they become body consciousness, they on their own create hell. So God doesn't create hell and send them as mentioned in Bible. It was just a hint. That's it. Om Shanti.